Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimade Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine. Mugam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatam ham vande Shri Guru dinataranam paramananda madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. All glories to Lord Chaitanya, all glories to Lord Nityananda, all glories to Advaita Chandra, and all glories to all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Hare Krishna. So we were in chapter 8. We are still in chapter 8 of MadhyaLila, where we were discussing the talks between Chaitanya Mahāprabhu and Rāmānanda Rāya. And we were seeing that how expertly Chaitanya Mahāprabhu was asking just the right questions, and he would not settle for anything less than what he desired. So he was in a way empowering Rāmānanda Rāya to speak, and to speak for benefit of all of us also, because we would be sitting and reading these wonderful conversation between them. So to establish certain things as irrevocable fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asking Rāmānanda Rāya, and Rāmānanda Rāya is speaking, and then he is quoting from various scriptures, and then again he is answering and he is quoting from scriptures. So this is how this most intelligent, scripturally intelligent and transcendental conversation is going on. So in the last session we have completed till verse number 150 in the section 3 of this chapter, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asking about the truths of Radha Krishna and their pastimes. We have discussed in detail about Krishna Tattva, or the qualities, the nature of the absolute truth, Supreme Lord Krishna. And now we would be talking about Srimati Radharani in today's section.
Krishnera Ananta Shakti Tate Teen Pradhana Chitta Shakti Maya Shakti Jiva Shakti Nama. Krishna has unlimited potencies which can be divided into three main parts. These are the spiritual potency, the material potency, and the marginal potency, which is known as the living entities. So here it is very clearly mentioned that Lord, Supreme Lord, of course, because He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, His Shaktis also will be infinite. And that is what is mentioned here, Ananta Shakti. And they can be categorized into three types. One is Chit Shakti, the spiritual energy, the Maya Shakti, the material energy, and Jiva Shakti, the living entities. Antaranga Bahiranga Tatashkahiyare Antaranga Swarup Shakti Savara Upare.
In other words, these are all potencies of God, internal, external, and marginal. But the internal potency is the Lord's pleasure energy and stands over the other two. Simple words, there are three types of energies of Supreme Lord, internal, external, and marginal. And we will see now in the following verses, and here it is mentioned there, that out of these three, internal is the most powerful because it is Krishna's personal energy.
Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta Kshetragya Tatha Para Avidya Karma Samgyanya Tritiya Shakti Rishayate. The original potency of Lord Vishnu is superior or spiritual. And the living entity actually belongs to that superior energy. But there is another energy called the material energy, and this third energy is full of ignorance. So here same point is being corroborated with a verse from the scriptures that the original potency of the Lord is superior, it is spiritual, and the living entities also belong to this superior energy. So that is what Krishna also explains in the beginning of the 7th chapter, where he says that he mentions about the 8 different items, Bhumi, Rapo, Anal, Vayu. So like that he talks about 8 things, and he says that all of these belong to the separated material energy. And then beyond that, he says that there is a superior energy of mind, which is the living entity. So same thing is mentioned here. And the material energy of the Lord is full of ignorance. It is the dead matter actually that we see. So that is what being spoken about.
Satchidanandamaya Krishnera Swarupa Ataiva Swarupa Shakti Hayati Narupa. Originally, Lord Krishna is Satchid Ananda Vigrah, the transcendental form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Therefore, his personal potency, the internal potency, has 3 different forms. So there are 3 different forms of internal energy of the Supreme Lord. Anandamshe Hadini Sadamshe Sandhini Chidamshe Samvityare Jnanakari Mani.
Haladini is his aspect of bliss, Sandhini of eternal existence, and Samvit of cognizance, which is also accepted as knowledge. So within the internal energy or Antaranga Shakti of the Lord, these are the further finer divisions. The Haladini, which refers to the aspect of bliss, or Anand, and then we have Sandhini, the eternality, and Samvit of supreme cognizance or knowledge. Krishna ke ahlade tate nama haladini sei shakti dware sukha asvadeya pani.
The potency called Ladini gives Krishna transcendental pleasure. Through this pleasure potency, Krishna personally tastes all spiritual pleasure. So far we have discussed that Krishna's energies can be broadly divided into 3 categories. External, which refers to the dead matter around us, everything. So that is external energy of the Lord. Then there is marginal, which is this comprises of basically the living entity. So you, I, all of us, we are the marginal energy. And then the third one is the internal energy. So internal energy is Krishna's personal internal energy, which is there which is the spiritual in nature. So this spiritual or internal energy is again divided into three categories. So Sat, Chid and Anand. On that basis, there are three divisions. Out of these three, now we are zooming to one, that is Ladini. So this Ladini Shakti, the purpose of this is to give transcendental pleasure to Krishna. So when we talk about various pastimes of Krishna, we will see how this energy becomes active, because Krishna, through his pleasure potency, he enjoys spiritual pleasure.
Sukha Rupa Krishna Kare Sukha Aswadana Bhakta Gane Sukha Dite Ladini Karana. Lord Krishna tastes all kinds of transcendental happiness, although he himself is happiness personified. The pleasure relished by his pure devotees is also manifested by his pleasure potencies. So the Lord is tasting all kinds of happiness through this energy, although he himself is happiness personified. So we understand that Krishna is self-satisfied. He does not need anything from external for his own satisfaction and happiness, because he is happiness personified, but he further tastes transcendental happiness through the Ladini Shakti. And the pleasure or the bliss experienced by Lord's pure devotees is also manifested or resulted by this Ladini Shakti only. Ladini Rasara Amsha Tara Prema Nama Ananda Chinmay Rasa Premera Akhyana.
The most essential part of this pleasure potency is love of Godhead or prema. Consequently, the explanation of love of Godhead is also a transcendental mellow full of pleasure. So this Ladini potency, actually this is depicted by prema or the love of Godhead. So when a person reaches, when a jiva reaches to that degree where he starts spontaneously loving the Supreme Lord. So as of now, we are following a lot of rules and regulations. And these rules and regulations are to develop us and to bring us to that stage that we shift from rules and regulation to spontaneous love for Krishna. So that spontaneous love for Krishna is a most essential part of this Ladini Shakti.
Premera Parama Sara Mahabhava Jani Sei Mahabhava Rupa Radha Thakurani. The essential part of love of God is called Mahabhav or transcendental ecstasy, and that ecstasy is represented by Srimati Radharani. So as we were looking at the spiritual energy of the Lord, and that had three divisions, Haladini, Sandhini and Samvit. In that we further, the author is taking us into Haladini Shakti, and then Haladini Shakti, the core of Haladini Shakti is the love of God or prema, and the most essential part of that prem is Premera Paramasar Mahabhav Jani. So this, it is called Mahabhav, and this or transcendental ecstasy, and this core of Haladini Shakti is represented, or core of prema of Haladini Shakti is represented by Srimati Radharani.
Among the gopis of Vrindavan, Srimati Radharani and another gopi are considered chief. But when we compare the gopis, it appears that Srimati Radharani is most important because her real feature expresses the highest ecstasy of love. The ecstasy of love experienced by the other gopis cannot be compared to that of Srimati Radharani. So this is a quotation from Ujjwal Neelamani, and here we are beginning and getting into the section where we will see glories of Srimati Radharani. So we have discussed Krishna Tattva, and now we are going to discuss Srimati Radharani. And why is there a specific section dedicated to her? Because though she is one of the gopis, but then she is the one gopi who's the most important. So let's see here.
Premera Swarupa Deha Prema Vibhavita Krishnera Preyasi Shrestha Jagate Vidita The body of Srimati Radharani is a veritable transformation of love of Godhead. She is the dearmost friend of Krishna, and this is known throughout the world. So this is very important for us to understand that the form of Srimati Radharani, when we come to the temple, we see the deities of Radha Krishna, we see a picture of Radha Krishna. So when we look at Srimati Radharani, we must understand that she is the embodiment, or she is herself love of God. This is what she is. Premera Swarup Deha. So her form is made up of love of God. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabhis Tabhirya Eva Nijarupataya Kalabhi Goloka Eva Nivasati Akhilatma Bhuto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who resides in his own realm Goloka with Radha, who resembles his own spiritual figure and who embodies the ecstatic potency, Ladini. Their companions are her confidants, who embody extensions of her bodily form and who are imbued and permeated with ever blissful spiritual rasa. So now this verse is a part of a prayer which Lord Brahma is offering to Supreme Lord Krishna. This is from Brahma Samhita, and he is talking here that he worships that Govinda. Which Govinda? Who stays in Goloka, who is always accompanied by Srimati Radharani. Radharani's form is made up of or reminds of the ecstasy, the pleasure potency of Krishna. So if the pleasure giving energy of Krishna, it takes a form, it takes a shape, then that shape and form is Srimati Radharani. So we must not use our mundane understanding to try and figure out who's Srimati Radharani, because we cannot. She is completely inconceivable, because she is her whole form, her existence, her everything revolves around the Supreme Lord Krishna. In fact, here it also says that all her companions, so the other gopis, like if we come to our ISKCON Chennai temple and we have Lalita Sakhi and Vishakha Sakhi. If we go to Sridham Mayapur, then there are Ashta Sakhi. So all these Sakhis and so many others, they are all also mentioned that they are the extensions of the bodily form of Srimati Radharani, which means that each one of them, they just exist to give pleasure to the Supreme Lord. Se Mahabhavahaya Chintamani Sara Krishna Vancha Purna Kare Karyatandra.
That supreme ecstasy of Srimati Radharani is the essence of spiritual life. Her only business is to fulfill all the desires of Krishna. So this is why Srimati Radharani eternally exists. For what? To fulfill and please and satisfy the Supreme Lord. Mahabhava Chintamani Radhara Swarupa Lalitadi Sakhi Tandra Kaya Vyuha Rupa.
Srimati Radharani is the topmost spiritual gem, and the other gopis, Lalita, Vishakha, and so on, are expansions of her spiritual body. So just like we discussed in the last verse, so all the other Sakhis like Lalita, Vishakha and all, they are expansions of this spiritual form of Srimati Radharani, which is made of Krishna Prem.
Srimati Radharani takes her first bath in the shower of nectar of compassion, and she takes her second bath in the nectar of youth.
So here it is mentioned. Now this begins a very interesting section. So here the author is telling that how Srimati Radharani, first of all, she smears the paste of Krishna's affection, because she is made of Krishna's affection, she is made of Krishna's love. So that is her form. And then it is mentioned that there are 3 different types of bath she takes. So first bath she takes in the water of mercy or compassion. So this happens when Radharani completes around 10 years of age, and then it is described that she first appears as mercy personified. She is the compassion personified. The second bath she takes at noon, and that description is there that she takes bath in the nectar of youth. So she is mercy personified. She is ever youthful. She is the actual expression of her new youthfulness. Lavanya matra dharaya tadupari snana nija lajja shama patta sati paridhana.
After her midday bath, Radharani takes another bath in the nectar of bodily lustre, and she puts on the garment of shyness, which is her black silk sari.
So again, Radharani took first bath in mercy, second bath in youth, and this is a third midday bath. And what she takes bath in? So this is the nectar of full beauty. So her body is so very beautiful. So the author is very beautifully narrating or describing to us with the help of these words somebody who is inconceivable, someone whom we cannot understand and cannot be described. So Krishnadas Kaviraj is describing that beauty, and he is telling that she takes her third bath in the nectar of bodily luster or full beauty, and that is how she represents the quality of beauty and luster. So she represents compassion, she represents what is the second one? Youthfulness, and she represents beauty. So thus there are three kinds of bath she takes. And then after taking bath, what she does is she wraps around a sari, a black silken sari. And what does this black silk sari represents? So this represents her shyness. So this is how she is covered with shyness. So in next almost 12 or 15 verses, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj is comparing and contrasting each of Radharani's body part and the ornaments and the clothes, whatever she is wearing, and he is describing what it stands for. So she always wear a pinkish upper garment. So that is compared to affection for Krishna. That represents affection for Krishna.
Her personal beauty is represented by the reddish powder kumkum.
Then the sandalwood pulp, what she applies, that represents affection for her associates.
And the sweetness of her smile is like the camphor.
The abundance of musk, there is this musk smell comes around. So abundance of that, and that is a representation of the conjugal love for Krishna. So much love she has for Krishna.
Of course, in her love for Krishna, sometimes there is some craftiness, sometimes there is a little anger. Of course, this is all anger produced out of her love for the Lord, and that is represented by her hair arrangements.
And then what does her silk garment represent? So Krishna is there, and then there are so many other gopis, and if we read in detail, then there is another set of gopis who are headed by Chandravali. So Radharani exhibits her transcendental jealousy also, and this jealousy is there not like our mundane envy, but that jealousy is there to increase the love for Krishna. So that is represented by her silk garments.
Then attachment for Krishna is represented by the reddish color of betel nuts.
She always wears this kajal and mascara around her eyes. So that represents the loving affair. And if we read again, there is so much of description about her sidelong glances. So that becomes even more highlighted because of this mascara and the kajal what she wears.
Her ornaments are the ecstasies, which are headed by jubilation.
She always wears a flower garland, which is again a representation of her transcendental qualities.
And she has a beautiful, broad forehead, which represents the ultimate good fortune.
The gems which decorate herself is actually indicative of the loving affair. So actually she is decorated by the loving affairs of Srimati Radharani and Krishna.
That locket represents her heart.
And her mind is always concentrated on Krishna, the pastimes of Krishna. That is her constant meditation. So that is represented by all her gopi friends, whom she's always surrounded by.
And she keeps her hand on the shoulder of a friend, and that is a representation of her youth.
Her bodily aroma represents her pride.
And what does she wear in her ears? The name, fame, qualities of the Supreme Lord. Krishnera Vishuddha Prema Ratnera Akara Anupama Guna Gana Purna Kalevara.
Srimati Radharani is a mine filled with valuable jewels of love for Krishna. Her transcendental body is complete with unparalleled spiritual qualities.
If one asks about the origin of love of God, from where does this prema, the love for God, love for Krishna originates? The answer is that the origin is in Srimati Radharani alone. She is the source of this love of God, love of Krishna. Who is the most dear friend of Krishna? The answer again is Srimati Radharani alone. She is the dear most friend of Krishna, no one else. Srimati Radharani's hair is very curly. Her two eyes are always moving to and fro. Since all transcendental qualities are manifested in Srimati Radharani, she alone is able to fulfill all the desires of Krishna. No one else. Now please just give it a moment that Krishna is Supreme Lord. He is He's an infinite personality. So of course, his desires also would be infinite, of course, transcendental desires. And there's no one else who can so aptly, completely satisfy the Supreme Lord and all his desires other than Srimati Radharani. Yan Ratsa Bhagya Guna Vanche Satya Bhama Yan Ratani Kala Vela Shikhe Vrajadama.
Even Satyabhama, one of the queens of Sri Krishna, desires the fortunate position and excellent qualities of Srimati Radharani. All the gopis learn the art of dressing from Srimati Radharani. So these are the wonderful glories of Srimati Radharani, and the more we read, the more we would understand that how exalted her existence is, how she is the one who gives pleasure to the Supreme Lord. So this is how rare her occurrence is. And here it is mentioned that Krishna is one of the chief queens. Though Krishna had 16,108 queens, but two chief queens, Rukmini and Satyabhama. Out of that Satyabhama, it is mentioned that she always desired the fortunate position and qualities like Srimati Radharani.
Yanda Saundaryadi Guna Vanche Lakshmi Parvati Yanda Pativrata Dharma Vanche Arundhati. Even so, here three personalities are mentioned: Lakshmi, Parvati, and Arundhati. Even the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, and the wife of Lord Shiva, Parvati, desire Srimati Radharani's beauty and qualities. Indeed, Arundhati, the celebrated chaste wife of Vasishtha, also wants to imitate the chastity and religious principles of Srimati Radharani. So here we understand what an amazing role model she is. She is the personification of love of God. So all these personalities, Lakshmi Devi, Parvati Devi, Arundhati, all these personalities, they are aspiring. For them, Srimati Radharani is the role model. They are aspiring that how they can be chaste and follow the religious principles and satisfy the Supreme Lord as Srimati Radharani is doing. Yan Rasad Gurga Krishna na pai para Tandra Guna Gani Beke Mane Jivira Chara.
Even Lord Krishna himself cannot reach the limit of the transcendental qualities of Srimati Radharani. How then can insignificant living entity count them? So if we remember MadhyaLila8, beginning of the chapters where we were discussing about the internal reasons of the appearance of Lord Caitanya Mahāprabhu. So Krishna appears as Chaitanya Mahāprabhu because he wanted to taste this ecstasy, what Srimati Radharani tastes when she meets Krishna. Or how is Radharani thinking? Why Radharani finds Krishna so attractive? So all these answers all these questions would bewilder Krishna also. And that is why Krishna had to come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to find the answers for these questions. So that is why it is mentioned that even for Krishna it is very difficult, rather it is mentioned, cannot reach the limit of transcendental qualities of Radharani.
प्रभु कहे जानिलु कृष्ण राधा प्रेम तत्वा शूनिते चाहिए दुहा विलास महत्वा. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, now I have come to understand the truth of loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. Nonetheless, I still want to hear how both of them gloriously enjoy such love. So the Lord is the personification of all the rasas. Srimati Radharani is the personification of love of God. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants to know how they experience together, how they experience this love together. Yeva prema vilas viva ekaya taha shunito mar sukhaya kinahaya.
Rāya Rāmānanda then informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that there was another topic known as Prema Vilas Vivarta. You may hear of this from me, Rāmānanda said, but I do not know whether you will be happy with it or not. So Rāmānanda Rāya, now understanding Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mind, he is telling that there is something more. What is that? Prema Vilas Vivarta. But he is also saying that I am not very sure if you would be happy with what I am going to say or if I'll present it properly.
Ita baliyapan krita gita egahila preme prabhu swahaste tan mukha achadila. Saying this, Rāmānanda Rai began to sing a song he had composed. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, out of the ecstasy of love of Godhead, immediately covered Rāmānanda's mouth with his own hand. So as the description began, Rāmānanda Rai composed a song and started to sing how Srimati Radha and Krishna enjoy each other's love. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu experienced such ecstasy that he immediately covered the mouth of Rāmānanda Rai. Prabhu kahe sadhya vastu ravadhi haya tomar prasade iha janilu nishchaya.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirmed these verses recited by Sri Rāmānanda Rai, saying, this is the limit of the goal of human life. Only by your mercy have I come to understand it conclusively. So actually what Rāmānanda Rai was describing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it was giving so much of ecstasy to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he was not able to withhold so much of ecstasy. And then finally he is saying, so till this time he was asking for more, and now finally Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that this is the limit of the goal of human life. So what is the limit of the goal of human life? Attaining that Krishna Prem, that stage of Krishna Prem, that is the goal of human life. So now goal of human life is described. Now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to ask another very, very, very important question. And this question is, how to attain that goal? So what is the sadhana or the process to attain the sadhya or the goal?
Sadhya vastu sadhana vinu keha nahi paya kripa kari kaha Rāya papara upaya. The goal of life cannot be achieved unless one practices the process. This is very logical, that unless we follow a process, how can we achieve the goal? Now, being merciful upon me, please explain that means by which this goal can be attained. So, goal has been very amazingly, beautifully, in great detail, has been explained that the goal of life is to attain that love for Krishna that Srimati Radharani has for Krishna, and by her grace. So, how do we attain that? Rāya kahe ye kaho se kahi vāni ki kahi ye bala manda ki chui na jani.
Sri Rāmānanda Rai replied, I do not know what I am saying, but you have made me speak what I have spoken, be it good or bad. I am simply repeating that message.
त्रिभुवन मध्ये आईचे हाय कोण धीरा ये तो मार माया नाटे हाई बेक स्थिरा. Within these three worlds, who is so undisturbed, Dhira, that he can remain steady as you manipulate your different energies?
Mora mokhe vakta tumi, tumi hao shota,
Atyanta rahasya shuna sadhanera katha.
So actually Rāmānanda Rāya is taking a very humble position. Understanding his position, he is telling that it's all glories to you. Actually, you are speaking through my mouth, and at the same time you are listening. This is very mysterious. So because Rāmānanda Rāya was also very surprised, he was astonished at what all was coming out of his mouth. And then he was realizing that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was making him speak this way. So he's saying, anyway, kindly hear the explanation of the process by which the goal can be attained.
Radha Krishna Lila8 ati gudatara dasya vatsalyadi bhave nahaya gochara. The pastimes of Radha and Krishna are very confidential. Gudatara. They cannot be understood through the mellows of servitude, fraternity, or parental affection. Save ek sakhi gane rihadhikara Sakhi haite haya Lila vistara.
So actually Rāmānanda Rāya is speaking something very interesting here. In the previous section we saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that the goal of life is to attain Krishna Prem. Like whom? Like how Srimati Radharani, following in the footsteps of Radharani. So now here he is telling that to understand this nitty-gritties of conjugal love with Krishna, it is not possible for anyone who's even in Krishna's Lila, who is holding the position of a friend or a servant, or what to talk of friend or servant, even if you are Krishna's parent, you cannot really understand this transcendental mellow which Krishna relishes with the gopis. So now here he is describing the process. Actually, only the gopis have the right to appreciate these transcendental pastimes, and only from them can these pastimes be expanded. So who can understand these transcendental pastime between Radha and Krishna? Only the gopis. So one has to get into that madhurya ras to understand that.
Sakhi vinai Lila pushtanai haya Sakhi Lila vistariya Sakhi aswadaya. Without the gopis, these pastimes between Radha and Krishna cannot be nourished. Only by their cooperation are such pastimes broadcast. It is their business to taste the mellows. So one thing we need to understand that we are discussing, reading the verses which like Krishnadas Kaviraj was explaining, that these are most confidential topics. Now, for people who have hearts contaminated with material desires, for them this is not possible to understand or appreciate all these topics. So, when our hearts are still infested with contamination, we must pray for the mercy of the Lord, and we must chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra sincerely. We must study the scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam with all our sincerity, and then we can hope and pray that a time would come that our heart becomes completely clean of the material dirt, and then one day we can begin to understand what is being stated in these verses. Sakhi vinai Lila8 gati Sakhi bhave ye tanre kare anugati.
Without the help of the gopis, one cannot enter into these pastimes. Only one who worships the Lord in the ecstasy of the gopis, following in their footsteps, can engage in the service of Shri Shri Radha Krishna in the bushes of Vrindavan.
Radha Krishna kunja seva sadhya se paya Se sadhya paite ara nahi ka upaya. Only then can one understand the conjugal love between Radha and Krishna. There is no other procedure for understanding. So if we understand and appreciate the love the gopis have for Krishna and for Radha and Krishna, then only we can begin to advance on this path. Sakhira swabhava eka akatya kathana Krishna saha nija lila nahi sakhirmana.
There is an inexplicable fact about the natural inclinations of the gopis. The gopis never want to enjoy themselves with Krishna personally. So now this particular thing is very, very important. This gives us a peek preview as what is the attitude of these gopis. So they are not there for any personal enjoyment. That is why they are so glorious. That is why they are topmost. That is why they are worshipable, because all their acts, nothing is for their personal enjoyment.
Krishna saha radhikara lila eka Rāya nija sukha haite tate koti sukha paya. The happiness of the gopis increases 10 million times when they serve to engage Sri Radha and Krishna in their transcendental pastimes. So the gopis, they're such amazing devotees that their happiness becomes million times more when they serve the supreme couple, Shri Radha and Krishna, in their transcendental pastimes. So by serving them, they receive the 10 million times. Yeah, unlimited happiness. Radha Swarupa Krishna Prema Kalparta
Sakhi Gana Haya Tara Palla Pushpa Pata. By nature, Srimati Radharani is just like a creeper of love of Godhead, and the gopis are the twigs, flowers, and the leaves of that creeper.
Krishna Lilamrita Yadi Lata Ke Sanchaya Nija Sukha Haite Palla Vate Koti Sukha Haya. When the nectar of Krishna's pastimes is sprinkled on that creeper, the happiness derived by the twigs and flowers and leaves is 10 million times greater than that derived by the creeper himself.
So it is mentioned here that how, analogy is given that Srimati Radharani is like the creeper. So there is a tree, and around the tree is the creeper. Generally, the creeper is like twirling around the tree. And this creeper has various twigs and flowers and leaves, which is represented by all the other gopis. So generally, the creeper is nourished by water. Instead of water, here it is mentioned how the creeper gets nourished when Krishna's pastime happens. So the nectar, which is derived from the association with Krishna. So when that nectar is sprinkled on the entire creeper, then it is mentioned that the gopis, or the flower and leaves and twigs, they enjoy 10 million times more than Srimati Radharani itself, which means, this is again a beautiful way of elaborating the previous verse as how the gopis derive so much of joy, bliss, ecstasy, satisfaction when they are assisting Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna in their pastime. So it is not that they are demanding that, okay, so I want to enjoy with Krishna. Their whole happiness is in seeing them together, this divine couple together. That gives them happiness.
Similarly, devotees also become very happy when they inspire others to take up Krishna consciousness and begin serving the Lord. So then the devotees derive. So I'm sure, if you had an opportunity and you could inspire someone to take up Krishna consciousness, and that person comes back and tells you, yes, I'm chanting Hare Krishna. Yes, I read Bhagavad Gita. Yes, I attended that course and it has changed my life. So I'm sure that happiness which you would have received at that time was incomparable with anything that else you would have experienced in your life.
Yadyapi Sakhira Krishna Sangame nahi mana Tathapi Radhika Yatne Karana Sangama.
Although the gopis, Srimati Radharani's friends, do not desire to enjoy themselves directly with Krishna, Srimati Radharani makes a great endeavor to induce Krishna to enjoy himself with the gopis. So that feeling is mutual. The gopis want to serve Radha and Krishna. Srimati Radharani wants the gopis to, Krishna and the gopis to enjoy themselves. So that way, Srimati Radharani also has actually all of that is sprouting from Srimati Radharani, that desire that others also engage in service of Krishna. So this is what I was explaining in the last verse, that how the devotee feels that experiences a greater happiness and bliss when he engages and inspires others to come and serve the Supreme Lord.
Nana chale Krishna preri sangama karaya, Atma Krishna sanga haite koti sukha paya. Presenting various pleas for the gopis, Srimati Radharani sometimes sent the gopis to Krishna just to enable them to associate with him directly. At such times, she enjoys a happiness 10 million times greater than that enjoyed through direct association. So this is a very significant lesson which we can learn from Srimati Radharani and her expansions, all the gopis, that how they don't want to come in forefront. They don't want to be in limelight. They want to serve from behind, and they want to encourage one and all to go and associate with Krishna. Here, associate with Krishna means serving Krishna. So they derive happiness when they empower others to serve Krishna. So same should be our mind, our mood and attitude. Like yesterday, I was having a conversation with one devotee. So she was telling that she was asking me, very, very sincere and humble soul. So she was asking me that sometimes she feels jealous when she sees that other devotees who have joined ISKCON much later, they have progressed more. They are actually serving more. So she was telling that I feel jealous, I feel envious that why I am not able to do and they are able to do. Is that okay? So I was explaining her something on similar ground, that Krishna does not see whether I am directly serving, but Krishna sees how many people I am inspiring to serve Krishna. So that becomes more attractive. That soul or that jiva becomes more attractive to Krishna, who actually some way or the other engages one and all in service of Krishna. So as we were reading, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was telling, when that Brahmana wanted to come with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when Mahaprabhu was in South India and the Brahmana, Kurma Brahmana, he wanted to come with Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu gave him an instruction that be where you are and meet whatever number of people you are meeting and inspire everyone to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, to preach everyone, to give Krishna's teachings to everyone. That is more pleasing to me. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, if you will come with me, that is not so pleasing to me. But if you will do this, that pleases me more. So similarly, here we see that Srimati Radharani want others to associate with Krishna. All the other gopis, they want to serve Srimati Radharani. And when we are serving, when we take a back seat and we empower others, so that happiness is 10 million times greater than actually directly serving Krishna. Anyone vishuddha preme kare rasa pushta, tana sabara prema dekhi Krishna haya tushta.
The transcendental mellow is nourished by that mutual behavior in transcendental love of Godhead. So this mutual behavior by Srimati Radharani and by the gopis, that is nourishing the transcendental mellow of love of God, in love of God. When Lord Krishna sees how the gopis have developed pure love for him, he becomes very satisfied.
Sahaja gopira prema nahi prakrit kama, kama krida samye tara kahi kama nama. It is to be noted that the natural characteristic of the gopis is to love the Supreme Lord. Their lusty desire is not to be compared to material lust. Nonetheless, because their desires sometimes appear to resemble material lust, their transcendental love for Krishna is sometimes described as lust. So now here it is mentioned very, very specifically that one should not mistake their desire to be with Krishna to be a lusty desire. It is not so. Because Krishnadas Kaviraj is starting from the beginning and he has said that how they are all pleasure potency of Krishna. So the pleasure potency or the pleasure energy of Krishna has taken this form of Srimati Radharani, and all the gopis are her expansions. So we must not compare them with normal, mundane, lusty feelings for others.
Although the dealings of the gopis with Krishna are on the platform of pure love of Godhead, such dealings are sometimes considered to be lusty. But because they are completely spiritual, Uddhav and all the other dearmost devotees of the Lord desire to participate in them. So here it is mentioned that personalities like Uddhava and other great devotees of the Lord. So what is very specific about these great devotees? They have intense love for Krishna. At the same time, they do not even have a pinch of material lust. They do not have a pinch of desire to enjoy anything of this material world. So even when such pure devotees, completely transcendental pure devotees, they hear of the love of the gopis and Srimati Radharani, they want to participate in them. So that is how pure the love of the gopis for Krishna, Srimati Radharani's love for Krishna, it is completely pure. And we need to understand that we are materially contaminated living entities, living in this material world, we are in this material world for our own enjoyment, independent of the Lord. So our natures are very different and I would say opposite of the nature of these gopis and Srimati Radharani. And therefore it is practically not possible for us to understand, appreciate their transcendental feelings for the Lord. Nijindriya sukha hetu kamera tatparya Krishna sukha tatparya pi bhavavarya.
Lusty desires are experienced when one is concerned with his own personal sense gratification. The mood of the gopis is not like that. Their only desire is to satisfy the senses of Krishna. So the author is writing this again to bring it, to establish this fact that the gopis' desire was not for sense gratification, and that is why we cannot confuse it with material lust.
So when we come to this platform of desiring only satisfaction of Krishna, then we can actually begin to understand the transcendent loving pastimes of the gopis and Krishna.
Among the gopis, there is not a pinch of desire for sense gratification. Their only desire is to give pleasure to Krishna, and this is why they mingle with him and enjoy with him. So the only reason for the gopis' existence is basically to serve the Supreme Lord.
Se gopi bhavamrite yanra lobhaya Veda dharma loka tyaji se Krishna bhajaya.
One who is attracted by that ecstatic love of the gopis does not care about popular opinion or the regulative principles of Vedic life. Rather, he completely surrenders unto Krishna and renders service unto him. So now this part of the process, so Rāmānanda Rāya is describing the process because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has asked what is the process to achieve that goal. So he is telling here that a person, so initially when we start, we perform sadhana bhakti. So there are so many rules and regulations. So here it is mentioned that regulative principles of Vedic rules, Vedic life. So we are supposed to follow that because we are not used to what we are listening or we are reading. So in order to understand all that, we need to live a very regulated life. As of now, our hearts are completely contaminated. Our mind, our thought, everything is contaminated. So we need to chant a minimum specified number of rounds. We are supposed to eat bhoga which is offered to Krishna. We are supposed to visit temple regularly. We are supposed to read Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam and take association of devotee. And then when we continue doing so for a very long period of time, then one may become attracted to that ecstatic love of gopis. And then that situation may come that the person does not bother about public opinion or he is not really bothered about the regulative principles of Vedic life also. And then he surrenders himself completely to Krishna for his pleasure. So till such a time comes, we all are expected to perform sadhana bhakti very nicely. And when we do that, then we come to this platform of Raganuga.
Raganuga marge tanre bhajaye jana sei janavaya vraje vrajendra nandana.
If one worships the Lord on the path of spontaneous love and goes to Vrindavan, he receives the shelter of Rajendra Nandan, the son of Nanda Maharaj. So actually, like there is this book, Nectar of Devotion. So there, Rupa Goswami talks about 64 angas of bhakti, or 64 items, which one is expected to perform in a very regulated way, like how it is given in the Shastra. So all the bhakti principle he has given in the form of a sutra. He has studied various Shastras and he has compiled a list of 64 items which actually enhances one's bhakti. So when one performs that under the guidance of spiritual master, then gradually a person comes to the platform of spontaneous love or raganuga. And when one achieves that, then one can go to Vrindavan and take shelter of Rajendra Nandan.
Vrajaloke kona bhava lana ye bhaje bhava yogya deha pana Krishna paya vraje. In his liberated stage, the devotee is attracted by one of the 5 humors in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As he continues to serve the Lord in the transcendental mood, he attains a spiritual body to serve Krishna in Golok Vrindavan. So the devotee has developed this spontaneous attraction. He is completely free from material contamination. He has no desire for sense enjoyment, and thus he is situated on the liberated platform. He is completely liberated from the material modes of Rajogun, Satogun and Tamogun. And then this devotee develops attraction for one of the 5 types of rasas, either Shantras or Dasiras or Sakhiras or Vatsalyaras or Madhuriras. So at the liberated stage, he develops some attraction for one of these. As he continues to serve the Lord in that particular rasa, in that particular transcendental mood, he achieves a suitable spiritual body. So if it's Dasya or if it's Sakhya or if it is Madhurya, so a suitable spiritual body he receives by the grace of the Lord, and he goes to the spiritual world, Golok Vrindavan, and serves the Lord there. Tahate dashtanta upanishad shruti gana raga marge bhaji paila vrajendra nandana.
Those saintly persons who represent the Upanishads are vivid example of this. By worshipping the Lord on the path of spontaneous love, they attain the lotus feet of Rajendra Nandan, the son of Nanda Maharaj.
So here there is a description of the personifications of Upanishad Shruti Gan. So the saintly persons who represent the Upanishads, they also worship the Lord on the path of this spontaneous love, and that is how they achieved the lotus feet of Krishna. Samadrisha shabde kahe sei bhave nugati sama shabde kahe shruti gopi deha prapti.
The word samadrisha mentioned in the 4th line of the previous verse means following the mood of the gopis. The word sama means the Shruti's attainment of bodies like those of gopis. So just by following the mood of gopis, just by following the mood and attitude of gopis, which is nothing for my personal pleasure and everything for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. So just by following that mood, what happened to Shrutis, which is a part of Upanishad, they attained the body like those of the gopis.
Angri Padma Sudhaya kahe Krishna Sangananda Vidhi Marge na paiye vraje Krishna Chandra. The word Angri Padma Sudha means associating intimately with Krishna. One can attain such perfection only by spontaneous love for God. One cannot obtain Krishna in Golok Vrindavan simply by serving the Lord according to the regulative principles. Nayam Sukhapo Bhagavan Dehi Nam Gopika Sutaha Jnani Nam Chatma Bhutanam Yatha Bhakti Matamiha.
the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, the son of Mother Yashoda, is accessible to those devotees engaged in spontaneous loving service, but he is not easily accessible to mental speculator, to those striving for self-realization by severe austerities and penances, or to those who consider the body the same as the self. So actually here Krishnadas Kaviraj is giving the process which Rāmānanda Rāya is giving to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the process is spontaneous loving service or Raganuga Marg. So only by Raganuga Marg can one attain the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. It is not possible by mental speculation or people performing austerities or penances, etc., or the materialist people. It is not possible.
Ataiva gopi bhava kara angikara ratri dina chinte radha krishnera vihara. Therefore, one should accept the mood of the gopis in their service. In such a transcendental mood, one should always think of the pastimes of Sri Radha and Krishna. Siddha dehi chinti kare tahani nirvana Sakhi bhave paya Radha Krishnera charana.
After thinking of Radha and Krishna and their pastimes for a long time, and after getting completely free from material contamination, one is transferred to the spiritual world. There the devotees attain an opportunity to serve Radha and Krishna as one of the gopis. So here the process has been defined, that how thinking of Radha and Krishna and their pastimes and absorbing in that mood, free, completely free from material contamination. In that state of mind, one can attain this perfection of the human life.
Gopi anugatya vina varya gyane bhajile hanahi paya Vrajendra nandane. Unless one follows in the footsteps of the gopis, he cannot attain the service to the lotus feet of Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj. If one is overcome by knowledge of the Lord's opulence, he cannot attain the Lord's lotus feet, even though he is engaged in devotional service. So, of course, the love that the Brajvasis and the gopis have, it is free from the understanding that Krishna, free from it's not covered by awe and reverence for the Supreme Lord, which comes by recognizing his innumerable opulences and potencies.
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So with this, we have come to an end of today's session. We will continue in the next session, and looking forward to all your comments about your learnings. It was an intense session. So what was our take home? What was our learning? We will wait for you, for your comments. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Chaitanya Charitamrta ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare